So the moment it became real for me was probably when I had an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
Felt a shift, like a phasing going, like this is kind of like my body phasing through my physical, and then just sort of walking away from my body in broad daylight.
I was having a normal Army career, and I moved to Fort Meade, and I happened to move in next door to the operations training officer for Stargate, and I had never put the words remote and viewing together. And one day they came and said, hey, we want to recruit you for our program. That was probably as close to that kind of moment as I got, is that, whoa, this is really going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another one of my now pet projects, consciousness in terms of how it relates to UAP and in fact, potential, non-human intelligence.
The way to connect with the phenomenon is to really connect to that heart space. They know your thoughts, they know your hearts, consciousness, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever it is
Yeah.
that's coming to interface with me, I have 100% trust and can absolutely let go of all of the things that I am to follow whatever it is that's telling me to let go. This flowering energy of my spirit came out of the top of my head, and that's when I got sucked back into this vortex of energy and went off for seemingly thousands of years.
If you meditate enough, sometimes reality starts to seem a bit slippery. You can kind of enter into this flow state that makes reality itself seem very malleable. Maybe the simulation argument is really quite real.
Obviously, we're at Psigames. We're at this conference that's all about consciousness exploration, exploring the possibilities of consciousness. And with that, there are a lot of downstream philosophical questions. But for you, when did these questions go from just like hypothetical intellectual questions to, oh shit, like this is real?
So the moment it became real for me was probably when I had an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
And not just an out-of-body experience, one that happened during the day. So a daytime out-of-body experience was, for me, the threshold. And after diving into the Monroe Institute, the gateway process, also reading Journeys Out of the Body, it kind of stoked this flame where I'm like, I need to make this happen because I need to know. So when I got home from the Monroe Institute after doing the gateway process and meditating every single day, almost like a military regiment, early in the morning, after about 3 months of using, hemisync or binaural beats or what have you, and being completely relaxed, I began to have out-of-body experiences. And although they were each unique and terrifying, like so terrifying every single time, they all had happened during like the night. They all had happened from a waking dream, or I transitioned into an out-of-body state seemingly from a lucid dream.
Mm-hmm.
Until once, it was 5:30 in the morning, I woke up to go to the bathroom and I was feeling incredibly like tired and relaxed, and did my meditation, took off my headphones, laid down, and instantly felt a shift, like a phasing going, like this is kind of like my body phasing through my physical, and then just getting up and sort of walking away from my body in broad daylight, trying to open the window and go through the window, and hearing a voice.
Right.
And then very scary, very terrifying. It was like baby steps, like 5 steps away from my bed, to then seeing my body going back into it, laying down and waking up. And I say waking up, just coming out of my meditation, because I had not fallen asleep. That was the one time where I knew, because I looked at the clock, it was 5:35. When I started my meditation, it was 6:35. When I ended my meditation, it was 6:37.
Okay.
When I came back into my body. So
Yeah.
I was lucid the whole time.
Wow.
I was having a normal Army career, and I moved to Fort Meade, and I happened to move in next door to the operations training officer for Stargate, and across the street from one of their more recent trainees who's learning remote viewing. And I had never put the words remote and viewing together. And one day they came and said, hey, we want to recruit you for our program. And there's a whole longer story I'm not going to go into. I may have for you before, I don't know, but that was probably as close to that kind of moment as I got, is that, whoa, this is really going on. Mm-hmm. There's a line item in the federal budget that supports this. That must mean there really is something to it. My first target was actually this huge water tower. And it was following what we call the outbound team protocol, where a team goes out, usually 2 people. They serve as a beacon to attract your attention to the actual target, and the target was this huge water tower. On the way back, they stopped in and bought donuts. And I described not the water tower, but the donut shop, because that was more interesting to me, I guess.
Right.
So,
And you physically went to the donut shop, right?
Oh, yeah. Part of the protocol is that you get taken to the target without them telling you what the target is. They take you there for your first experience of it in person. And the water tower was not it, but on the way back, my attention was drawn to the donut shop. And I just felt compelled to want to go see that. And so they pulled in, and I went in, and yep, that's what I had remote view.
Wow.
It was the donut shop. My father-in-law said, "Trust you to find the donuts."
Yeah. What was that moment like walking into the donut shop?
It was really one of gratification. I mean, it wasn't shock. One of my interests these days is this phenomenon called ontological shock, where your reality changes, and you have this just a kind of effect. This wasn't like that. Of course, I'd been prepared for it a bit, because they'd had me do some readings. I'd read Mind Reach by then, and was familiar with what the whole point of everything was. So I was somewhat prepared for it, but it was still confirmation. It was a confirmation kind of experience for me.
I've asked myself that question many times. Was there a catalyzing event that led to my belief in Psi, that led to my desire to be involved in its research and, I guess, the community of people that are interested in this stuff? And the answer is no. I can't point to a specific catalyzing event that blew my mind open, or that I realized it was all real or something like that. It wasn't really like that for me.
But it seems like you did have experiences with your own consciousness early on that led you to believe that this is real, remote viewing.
When I got into the Psi stuff, or when I became aware of the Psi stuff, is about the same time that I got into the field.
Okay.
I read a book about it.
Yeah.
I had a friend's dad who took me to the remote viewing conference, the SSE conference. And I was like 15.
Yeah.
So you have all of these scientists and adults who they're talking about it as though it's real. Clearly there must be something there. Right. And then I began reading the research, and by that time there's a lot of really good research on it. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, there's really good studies, there's reputable people behind it. I see that it's not always repeatable, but it is significant. Some months or years later that I began to study remote viewing and practice it more. And then you can see for yourself, right? You can do a session, you can nail the target. You can do a really good job. And so I did that a few times, right? In the beginning, it was like, oh yeah, it's real. But it had already, I had already kind of assumed that this stuff was real. I had every reason to think that it was.
Right.
It was not a moment that kind of blew my mind necessarily. Yeah.
Do you remember the first target you really nailed? Do you remember what it was?
The first targets I really nailed were ARV sessions for baseball games. So in ARV, you're viewing your future, one of 2 targets usually, and that target represents a certain outcome in the real world. So the first target was an apple, I think, and the second was a hammer, something like that. And I think I got 10 out of 10.
Oh, yeah.
And the second one, I got something like 7 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. It was pretty good. And then in the CRV, the first formal target I did was the London Bridge. And it was a photo of the London Bridge at dusk. You could see the water, you could see the stonework, you could see the city behind it. And I thought it was really interesting that while I did describe the bridge, and I did describe the water and generally the qualities in the target, it was a totally different perspective. It wasn't the perspective from the photo.
Interesting.
It was like the perspective from being over here, looking at the same target.
Wow.
Which is really interesting, right? I still can't really explain that.
But the shift that really took me over the edge was the studies in remote viewing.
Yeah.
And looking, I had planned to post that whole remote viewing journey that I went through to the main channel, to my magic audience.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh, they're not going to like this. And, maybe some people will come over from the Met who are also curious, but sending it out to a group of skeptics is probably a bad idea, initially. So that's why I was like, you know what, let's just do this new endeavor because I'm really passionate about this. And so, yeah, that shift in remote viewing, doing it myself and realizing that, I'm not the best remote viewer, but there is something there. Just in my own remote viewings, like multiple sessions that were clearly, unmistakably me describing the target.
Yeah.
There were some sessions where I did not have an extra adjective or descriptor that wasn't part of the target.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's not like I'm like, oh, the thing is fuzzy and spiky and warm and cold. And no, I said one thing and it corresponded entirely to the target. And that target could have been anything. So, and there's peaks and valleys. It's not always, good. But when it does happen, you go, man, it really could have been anything. You have to think that, okay, maybe there's something here. And I think that that's what the government, why they kept funding it.
Right.
Because they kept also having to approve the budget year after year. Joe McMoneagle told me he'd perform these remote viewing, tasks or whatever in a skiff for some oversight committee that had to approve the budget. And obviously he'd blow them out of the water because they approved the budget for 20 years.
Yeah.
I had achieved all of the goals that I had set for myself, and everything had all the right answers, or so I thought. Beautiful girlfriend, amazing friends, nice place to live, all the toys, speedboat, motorcycle, all the stuff. And I started to look inside and say, okay, if I'm going to be forever chasing something within me is broken. And so I started to do a comparative search of world religions. And I came across a book on Zen by D.T. Suzuki, Introduction to Zen, and I learned about this thing called meditation. And so I started to try to meditate, and I'd usually start meditating and then wake up the next morning after I'd fallen asleep, that type of thing. But I started to practice and got better at it. I started with a little prayer, and I said, hey, if there's anything more for you to show me or for me to know, I'm ready. Because I've been disillusioned by, I've chased all these material things, and I've attained all these material things, and I've got all these right answers according to the American dream of what I'm supposed to have to be happy.
Yeah.
And yet I'm not happy. So if there's more to know, I'm ready. And about 20 minutes in, something started to happen within me. There was this silence, this quietude of no motion in my mind at all, and then this amazing buildup of energy started to happen, what I perceived to be behind me. And it was alarming to the point that I was in fear for my existence. Like, I didn't know what was going on. My whole body was vibrating. It felt like I was losing my grip on reality and my grip on the physicality of my existence. And so I started to panic, and then I heard this voice say, let go. And I was like, well, fuck that. I don't want to let go and leave my body. Is this me dying? Am I having a heart attack? I want to stop this process. I don't know what's going on. And finally, this very familiar energy that I seem to have known since the beginning of time, that I'd simply forgotten, came up and gave me a hug from behind and whispered in my ear, let go. And I knew that consciousness without question. And so at that point I did, and had this, like, what I now understand to be a Kundalini feeling, heat traveling up the spine all the way to the top, to an immense pressure inside my head that I thought my head was going to explode. And then all of a sudden there was this audible pop, this flowering energy of my spirit came out of the top of my head. And that's when I got sucked back into this vortex of energy and went off for seemingly thousands of years. Like, I went through the whole life review, and then I went through a number of experiences that was multiple thousands of years long, it seemed. It was normal. I was like, okay, I'm dead. Oh, this is what happens after you die. You go off and be other things. You go off and experience other things. You get to take a tour of the physics of the universe and understand how all of the energy interactions come about. Many things that I can't really even wrap my mind around, because, it's like the secrets of black holes. humans just don't have the capability of understanding that stuff.
Right.
You can't wrap our heads around it, but you can in that space. And so it was a surprise to me after all those experiences that I get this message, well, it's time to go back to Earth. I was like, oh, okay, so I guess I got to go back and be a new baby and see what that's all about and do a turn. Maybe it's my responsibility or whatever. And they were like, no. And then I started to see the image of my body still meditating on my bed in my house that I had forgotten. I was gone so long that I had forgotten that whole existence, that I was a human named Sean.
You come from this rare perspective of this stuff kind of being normal, but when did it become like a reality for you personally? Not like an idea, but like something just for you, where your whole outlook changed?
So when I was 13 was when all of this stuff more or less started for me, like the beings, the orbs, all that stuff. To paraphrase the story, right? It started in 2007. These like balls of fire come down from the sky. My dad sees these beings. They have telepathic messages. And basically as that affected me, I started seeing orbs like right away, like within a week. They're outside, they're up in the sky. My dad's like, come look, come look. So at 13, I kind of already had that moment of seeing something that was supernatural, metaphysical, divine, whatever, paranormal. It goes by many names. So for 5 years, I'm having these experiences, and I didn't understand what it was. And then at 18, my dad sees the lady. And that's a whole other story. That's a long story, and we can do that later. I was just talking to my dad, and I was like, Dad, why can't I see something up close? I'm seeing all these orbs. I want to see something up close. I want to see a being or an entity. I want to see something, a few feet away. Am I not worthy? The thing that really kicked it off was he said that they are not up there in a disc with a little periscope, spying on you with headphones on. All right, look, Chris is he's looking left. Everybody show up over there. It's not like that. And he said they hear your thoughts, that they know your thought that you're going to think before you think it, that they know which direction you're going to look before you look. They're in the air. And he was explaining this to me for the first time. I had a hard time accepting that as an 18-year-old kid. I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And within a few moments of that, this cow just started mooing. And then there was 2 cows, and then there was 3 cows, and 4 cows, and 5 cows. And it was like literally voices in thin air just mooing at us. And I'm looking around, I'm like, there's no cows. There's literally no cows for 5 to 10 miles anywhere around us, and they're just mooing. And it was definitely like you could say it was a clairaudient experience. You could say there was something actually there materializing a sound. I don't know. I heard cows.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my dad looked at me and he laughed, and he's like, she came to me as a bull. She looked like an ethereal bull.
Yeah.
Charged over him, and then and you know the story.
Yes.
When you're going through something and you start speaking about something personal, not everybody's going to get it, but it'll resonate with some people.
Yeah.
So we're all on different journeys anyways. I'll say what I have to say because it's my journey. And if it resonates with some people and they're like, dude, me too. I felt that too. Like you had an experience. We can talk about that. I don't care if somebody didn't have an experience and says it's not real. It's cool. You didn't have the experience. It's fine. I understand. I would say the same thing. If I wanted to conform to norms, I wouldn't have become a magician on YouTube. I would have been a pirate. No, but it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what the public perception of this is. I spoke yesterday about like this idea about the Pygmalion effect, where you kind of Pygmalion, you'll like this, is an ancient Greek myth. He was the king of Cyprus and an artist, and he was completely disillusioned with the flaws of women. And so he constructed his own woman out of spite, like out of marble, right? And loved her. She was so beautiful that he fell in love with her. And he kissed her every day and he brought her flowers. The equivalent of someone falling in love with AI today, right?
Or one of those like otaku nerds who falls in love with his anime doll.
Yeah, correct. Those are getting hot, by the way.
I mean, let's
but
put AI in them and it's over.
They need to pump the brakes on that.
Yeah.
But then, he goes to this festival of Aphrodite, prays to Aphrodite, comes home, kisses a statue, and sure enough, the lips are warm, and she loves him, and they get married and have a child and whatnot. But it's this idea, this Pygmalion effect, that belief can change reality. That strong belief, maybe faith, or maybe just knowing on some level, can affect and collapse wave functions and change how things are, or make them appear out of some type of ethos through manifestation. I don't know. But there seems to be an effect there. And so I think it's good to have these conversations and to talk about it with people who don't believe it, because I think slowly the seed gets implanted in their subconscious, and that one day they're going to find another point of connection and be like, Chris, I thought he was crazy. He was talking about this stuff, but then this happened, right? So, yeah.
So there was actually more of a significant eye-opening event for me, a significant change catalyst for me. It wasn't having psi experiences or really studying the psi stuff so much as the relatively mainstream academic discussion on the mystery of consciousness itself.
Yeah.
The hard problem of consciousness, for example. That really got me thinking, right? Because that forces you to try to change your perspective on the lived experience of the first person perspective. It's easy to think about psi and psi techniques as yourself. And to think about what's going on in terms of standard mechanistic mental models. Going out and accessing information. No real perspective change is required when we think about psi. Right? Maybe a little bit with time and information coming to us from different means, but we can model it in a very intuitive way, I think. But if you're thinking about the mystery of consciousness, the hard problem, why there's sentience attendant to biology at all in the first place, that's a trip.
Totally.
And to me, I think that was kind of the more eye-opening, more catalyzing event. It can begin in you a process that meditation also begins. That is to say that you stop identifying so much with the thoughts that you have, with the story that your brain creates, with what the mind is offering to you, and you start identifying more as pure awareness itself. Right? You start meditating, that's what happens. Right? You bring that awareness to awareness itself. You're like, wait a minute, what is this? What's going on, right? You realize that you're this witnessing, this eternal witnessing component, right? But the same is true of actually the mainstream perspectives on the mystery of consciousness through the mainstream academic stuff. When you think about the hard problem of consciousness, you end up in the same place.
Right.
And that to me is a more palpable experience than the psi. At least it was a more palpable experience than many of the psi things.
Interesting.
So there's the idea that consciousness is just an artifact of the brain. Okay, that the brain processes generates consciousness. Sufficiently complex system in physical world can generate consciousness, and so consciousness itself is a subset of the physical processes. The next one is that consciousness is fundamental. It's a version of idealism from the old philosophical traditions, right? That consciousness, actually everything including the physical world, emerges out of consciousness. Okay. And the third one is that it's kind of a dualistic, but I have a different kind of spin on it. Dualistic idea that there's a physical domain, there's a consciousness domain, and they are interleaved. They permeate each other to some degree, and that's a very rough term, but
it's like dual aspect monism, sort of.
Well,
I guess that's
something else.
More,
that's a different, and we're getting to nuances when we get there. I guess best what you call pluralist, where I believe that consciousness is independent of the physical world, but still able to communicate with it through some kind of bridge laws. We don't know what that might be. And yet it's not like there's this sea of consciousness that we're just little pieces of dough popped off from it, right? that each of us are conscious entities. So it's a pluralistic kind of concept. Each of us are enduring consciousness entities, discrete kinds of consciousness. Maybe there's a consciousness field as well that supports it, but we are individually part of it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I think. And I think consciousness is non-physical. I think that there are physical aspects in that it integrates with physical processes in some certain way without being dependent on them, on physicalism. And yeah, there's a lot of hand waving going on here.
Of
but
course.
that's how we are. Everybody's theory is like that. So.
Right.
So I believe after a number of years of like putting thought into this and putting experimentation into this and doing research into various fields of psychic ability and remote viewing and things like that and consciousness expansion in general.
Yeah.
Right? I've come to the realization that we're in this limited physical package that doesn't have the capability to mentally process the infinity of the universe, that when you access consciousness, there's just way too much. It's like if you're trying to access the complexity of consciousness on a daily basis, you're not going to have the capability of lifting a sandwich to your mouth to eat and remain a physical creature. And so I think there are these glimpses that we have into consciousness where you break through that veil that's supposed to limit us and protect us from a survival standpoint so that we don't have too much to process. But once you break through that, the first time can be amazing, or the fifth time can be amazing, or whatever the time is for you can be amazing. But I think there's been a hole through that veil that you can then slip through and get additional peeks into the different aspects of the things that you want to explore, which is amazing and great. And I think it's a function of who and what we are to evolve into that and to break through from our limited understanding of things and our egoic existence and our mind processing that throws up all of these things in front of us that distract us. I think we're meant to find that place more and more. And I think that once you break through and you connect with that, it becomes easier over time.
Yeah. How has it like shifted your perception of what consciousness is? Like, what do you think human consciousness is?
Well, that's a big question, and I don't know. There are many thoughts that seem to fight for first place in my mind, with this stuff, whether it's some type of, morphic field or whether it's, simulation or whatnot. I don't know, but what I do realize more and more as I get older, and the more I have these incredible experiences like the out-of-body experience, we're in such a hurry to figure out what it is, but we're all in agreement that that's what happens when you die.
What do you mean that's what happens when you die?
Well, that like we have these, there's something beyond death, right? That's the whole reason we're studying all of this, is deep down we have this fear of the unknown, of dying, right? And so we want to know, how do we either become immortal or do we live forever when we die? Like, these are questions we want answers to. And we do that through meditation or asking the aliens or remote viewing or astral projection or, coming into contact with things from other dimensions. We want answers to what's after this. But we can all agree that it's something, right? The people, not all of us, but the people like you and I who speak to these people, they're all pretty convinced that, there's energy it persists, it goes on, information doesn't go anywhere, and something happens. And so, my question is always like, what's the hurry? Why are we trying to get the answers to something we're going to get the answers to?
Yeah.
Just enjoy it. Enjoy the conversations, have fun, find the little moments. I think, if anything, those experiences that I've had have taught me to peek behind the veil. Okay, now what? What do you want to see? Well, what's left? Well, there's got to be a reason I'm here. Yeah. Okay, well then have fun, figure that out.
How high is your conviction that we go on after death?
I don't think we go on individually. Pretty low conviction that we retain individuality. Pretty high conviction that there is a beyond. I can't compare that to what this experience is. This is the human experience. Right. But when the human experience ends, what's that experience? What's the next experience?
If you meditate enough, sometimes reality starts to seem a bit slippery,
Yeah.
kind of loose, right? It's a bit like if you practice letting go enough and you stop offering all of these types of reflexive subconscious resistance to things that show up in your life, even down to tensions in your own body, you can kind of enter into this flow state that makes reality itself seem very malleable, right? And in this malleable state, your ability to summon things to you or to bring forward opportunities, people, situations gets kind of ridiculous. Boy, those make you think that maybe the simulation argument is really quite real. When I think about the simulation argument, because it's couched in computer science terms, where we think about a software program, we think about bits, that kind of lacks some of the felt experience of life, right? It seems artificial. I don't think that's true. Actually, I think by becoming maybe more aware of the malleable nature of reality, or maybe just our experience of living in the world becoming more malleable, it rewards you with a greater attachment to the rhythm of life, right? And if you can hear the rhythm of life and you can feel the rhythm of life, then you can interact with it, right? You can actually start to go along with it and to work with it and to live more in its flow. Present moment feels a lot better.
Yeah.
Right? The answers to questions that you might have, big ones, small ones, they kind of show themselves. There's a kind of wisdom that's your own wisdom that can emerge just by letting go enough to allow yourself to live in the rhythm of life a little bit more.
To have every time you get one answer, you get 500 additional questions.
Right.
And that's, of course, the way human experience has always been.
Yeah.
But it seems to be, if anything, on steroids today.
Yes. Yes.
So that's another one of my now pet projects is consciousness in terms of how it relates to UAP and, in fact, potential NHI, non-human intelligence, which I think is actually a bad term, but that's a different subject, right? It's intriguing because they seem to be joined at the hip in some odd way. Right. For years I've kind of held the whole UFO UAP world at bay because I have former colleagues who want to just join them together in I think, irresponsible ways, remote viewing and UFO UAP. With these latest revelations, I think it's safe now to explore what kind of connection there is between these things.
In August of 2024, Jake and the Skywatcher team conducted their own operation with a psionic acid to see if they could summon a UAP themselves.
Look, there's two. Look at this. Look right here. Look at this one going down and this one going up.
And there clearly is. Now, one thing, of course, is UAP, as they seem, are part of the physical universe. And yet there are these consciously related phenomena that seem associated in some way. I can think of the German word gebunden, connected, connected to it, along with human consciousness and conscious experience.
Yeah.
So there's no answers here.
Right.
But there's plenty of new trajectories to follow in exploring and experimenting and researching.
The way to connect with the phenomenon is to really connect to that heart space. It's heart-based communication. That's what we have found in 18 years of connecting with this phenomenon over and over and over. It's about love. It's about kindness, humility. It's not about who do you worship, what God do you pray to necessarily. I don't think that stuff matters as much as we're told to believe.
Yeah.
Over the last 2,000 years, I think it's more so about the actual state of being that you exude, about being in that heart-based living, like loving, kind, treating people like your neighbor, like your brother, like your friend, and being merciful and compassionate. All that Christ-like, Buddha-like, Yoda-like, you know what I mean? And it's about aspiring to be that kind of person. That's how you connect to the phenomenon.
Yeah.
You can't fool it.
Do you think we have a skewed perspective on this, or do you think there is a tipping of the scales occurring? You know, are we reaching a tipping point where you think 10 years down the line, we will understand consciousness differently? We will understand God, the phenomena, the UAP phenomena differently. Do you think that's really where we're headed, or is that wishful thinking?
No, I think it's really where we're headed, and I think 10 years is a little bit too too long. I think it's happening now.
So why do you think we are? I mean, this is such an impossible to answer question, but why do you think we are in this limited form? Like, why do you think we, you know, because so many people want so badly to have an experience like this, and they meditate and they try, but it doesn't come, or it comes in very fragmented, scattered pieces.
Yeah. Well, the real answer is I don't know, but my mind loves to run to the idea of we are immortal, all-knowing creatures from a spiritual perspective, from a consciousness energy of the oneness in our individuated existences that look back upon itself, where the universe looking back upon itself. So I think I like to run to the idea that if you're this creature in this infinite space with infinite knowledge or access to whatever you want to access within consciousness, because there are no lines of delineation between you and other at that point, wouldn't it be amazing to come to a place and inhabit a body where you could forget that you're that infinite creature, and you're thrown into this uncertainty of, am I going to continue after this physiology ends? And what are all the struggles that this physiology has to deal with, from not just a resource allocation perspective of making sure that you can find the food and get all the things that you need to sustain the physical nature of your existence, but what are all the emotional hurdles that you're going to have to deal with? What are all the ups and downs, because you're forgetting that you're this immortal creature and you embody this identity that becomes you. How amazing of a roller coaster ride would that be, to simply forget that you're everything, all-knowing, immortal, no fear, and drop into something that absolutely terrifies you.
But when the human experience ends, what's that experience? What's the next experience? You know, and I'm in no hurry to get there. I'm probably here because of something or some type of reason, so might as well enjoy the ride, you know, go out for a spin.
Did I ever tell you about the infinity game thing?
No.
So I had a very punishing, you know, sequence of experiences during my ayahuasca retreat, and it was just tough. Every night was tough, like just torment, darkness, nausea, just feeling like you're in a fractal washing machine of chaotic mind's eye shit. But on the third night, I really, like, this is the one true maybe entity encounter that I've had where it's like, this is an intelligence, it feels masculine, it feels wizardly.
You told me about that.
Yeah. So, but he said something.
He showed you infinity, didn't he?
Yeah, basically he showed me like the night sky. Right. It was just like, I can tell you want answers. You're worried about a lot of stuff, but don't worry about it. Play this Michael game.
Yeah.
You're doing fine. And then he just gestured at the night sky and he's like, and then you'll play the infinity game.
Yeah.
And that's all, and that was pretty much it, but it was so profound, dude. And it felt so true.
Dude, how disappointing would it be if you spend your life looking for answers beyond death, and then as soon as you die, you get all the answers?
Yeah.
And then you go, well, why was I so concerned? Why wouldn't I just live then?
Right.
What the hell was I wasting all that time for? I was coming here anyways. We gotta dial it back a bit and be like, all right, let's just be silly for a second.
Yeah. I like to think that that's what this is. Like, let's just be silly. Let's forget that we're one. Let's forget that everything is perfect and immortal and there's no strife. And let's just go play. Yeah. Let's go play in human form and like into some tough scrapes.
Yes.
And then we'll come back together.
Learn some lessons, have some fun.